Today we present founder and director of Superflux, interaction designer Anab Jain. In welcoming her to Ann Arbor, I just wanted to mention that her work precedes her. I don't know, there may be a few in the audience that remember. The first time Anab Jain's work came to Ann Arbor was in 2005 at the 42nd Ann Arbor Film Festival, where the film Journeys, which she produced, won the Michael Moore Award for Best Documentary that year. It's a great film, and she assures me you'll get to see a small clip from it today. A big thank you to our partners for their support of today's program. The Art Institute of Chicago is a partner with us today, so thank you to the School of the Art Institute and especially Andrea Green there, and the Museum of Contemporary Art Detroit and Michigan Radio 91.7 FM. Tomorrow evening is the last of the 4 fall Penny Stamps on the Road events at MoCAD. This will take place at 6 p.m. featuring Anab Jain. So if she inspires you today, let others know that they can catch her there at MoCAD tomorrow. MoCAD at the corner of Woodward and Garfield in Detroit, 6 o'clock. In other relevant news, the Stamp School is launching a new degree program. This is a Master of Design, or MDes, in Integrative Design, which will commence next fall, 2015. The Stamps MDes looks to align graduate education with the best in emerging professional practice, dissolving traditional professional and educational silos to prepare a new generation of nimble, empathetic design practitioners. The program is now accepting applications until the January 1st deadline, so pass the word. And tomorrow there is a prospective graduate student open house from 9 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. at the Stamp School. So this is for both the MFA and the MDes programs. So you can get more information on our website, stamps.umich.edu. In other event news, there is another design talk on tap happening tomorrow. This is featuring empathic design researcher Deanna McDonough, who will give a talk titled "Do It Until It Hurts, Design Empathy." This is, you'd need empathy for that. This is at 1:30 p.m. tomorrow in the Art and Architecture Auditorium at the Stamp School, and it is open to the public. And if you need anything more to do this evening, at 7 p.m. around the corner and up the street at Rackham, you can catch Luna Fest, a film festival featuring short films made by, for, and about women. This is in the Rackham Amphitheater, or you can go to lunafest.org. We will have a regular Q&A today in the screening room, so please join us there directly after the talk to meet Anab. And next week, join us for art director of the New Yorker magazine, Françoise Mouly. And a special note to students in the audience, get here early next week because there will be the International Fair taking place in the lobby, which is for you. Only pre-lecture, not post. Reminder, please do turn off your cell phones. And now for a formal introduction of today's speaker, please welcome Stamp School Associate Professor and Director of the new MDes and Integrative Design program, John Marshall.
Hello. So here at Stamps, we're actively engaged in bringing into being a future where our graduates are prepared to be agile, resourceful, and responsive to the rapidly evolving needs of the 21st century. So what does the future look like? We might ask, what future are we talking about? If you've been watching the same films that I have, it's either a technological utopia where white reflective paneling and fluorescent lighting is overused, or a post-industrial anarcho-syndicalist dystopia where we are all garbage miners and we eat bugs. There are many possible futures, so which ones are we interested in making come into being? We're all actively participating in making the future right now, through the decisions we make, the things that we choose to pay attention to purchase, and to value. So what tools do we have to prototype alternative futures so that the choices we are making are informed? Designers engage in a future-oriented practice. Design is a process by which aesthetic, cultural, social, technical, and economic potential is imagined and then translated to give order to objects, environments, and activities. We make possible that which previously did not exist. The present time is one of great uncertainty. We know that merely repeating the recent past is not a viable option. Consequently, there are many alternative approaches to design that afford reflection on contemporary design practices and values, such as critical design, post-optimal design, speculative design, parafunctional design, dissident design, reflective design, design fiction, and even critical technical practice if you're an engineer, Jake. That's a joke. In their 2009 Core 77 article, The Four Fields of Industrial Design, our own Bruce and Stephanie Tharp made a case for discursive design as just such a tool, and they say, discursive design refers to the creation of utilitarian objects whose primary purpose is to communicate ideas. They encourage discourse. These are tools for thinking. They raise awareness and perhaps understanding of substantive and often debatable issues of psychological, sociological, and ideological consequence. Anab Jain and Superflux have been engaged in discursive design, creating experience prototypes and narratives that make tangible the implications of emerging technologies in our everyday lives through people-centered approach to design. I'm thrilled that Anab is here to share the work of our studio with us. Please welcome Anab Jain.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such an honor to be here today. Thank you, John, for the kind introduction. Thank you, Christina, for inviting me to the one-of-its-kind Penny Stamps series. It's truly unique. I've never seen such a program and speakers being invited, so all of you students are so lucky. So today I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about my work and my journey as a filmmaker, as a designer, as an artist, sharing the work I do and its underpinning aspirations. This is Ahmedabad, where I'm from, where I started as a filmmaker 15 years ago. This is a film shot on VHS tape, edited on a linear editing machine, a surrealistic exploration of the urban Indian landscape, of repetition and claustrophobia, interlaced with glimpses of hope and desire in neon lights and dusty streets. This is the film I made after I finished studying Journeys, the film Christina mentioned, a nearly silent documentary film about Mumbai's hellish suburban train journeys that sees 7 million people struggle to survive on the city's overcrowded train network. I was enamored by the cinematic image, drawn into the stories and lives of people and cities as they played out in the world around me. It was a hellish experience for people who were spending up to 3 to 4 hours commuting. I'm going to let you finish seeing this clip because it is quite something. Yeah, but I wanted to be involved in a more direct investigative practice, so I went to do my master's in interaction design at the Royal College of Art in London. This is an excerpt from Yellow Chair Stories, one of my final projects, where I put a yellow chair and a sign outside my shared house in London, offering free Wi-Fi to neighbors and passers-by. It was an attempt to rediscover and invent informal meeting spaces for our evolving electronic landscapes. And after graduating, I was fortunate to work with people and organizations where the technology and the way it interfaces in our everyday life was constantly interrogated. But as I looked around me, the predominant visual landscape of emerging technology was full of gloss and shine. From the intimacy of our bodies to our relationships, the places we live and work in, all normalized through a steady stream of beautiful pixels, where even a quick, badly done mashup, you can barely notice a glitch. Perfectly created singular visions designed to speak to our emotional subconscious, creating expectations and desires, framing our view of technology and indeed of the future. And there was this sort of overbearing assumption that as a graduating interaction designer with lots of student loans, one would work in the service of this landscape, facilitating and living within the conditions that drive this fictional world. As a designer, I began to get more and more interested in moving outside of this pixel-perfect world to make sense of our alarmingly uncertain and precarious world. Because reality is stranger than fiction, and the technological landscapes and its implications often too complex to fully comprehend. This is Cujo, a large-scale, fully autonomous robot dog made by Boston Dynamics, funded by the American military and now acquired by Google. In this video, you see Cujo doing rather well in a test patrol with US Marines. It walked for miles across a difficult terrain, carrying up to 400 pounds of their kit and weapons. From a large physical robot to an invisible one, a Hong Kong VC fund, Deep Knowledge Ventures, has made Vital a computer algorithm to its board member. Vital can make important investment recommendations by poring over vast amounts of data and even vote on whether the firm should make an investment in a particular company or not. Vital is just a glimpse of how algorithms are beginning to gain autonomy and reveal their agency in unexpected and interesting ways. And now, to a short video of a product that was just released last week, which some of you might have seen.
It's called Amazon Echo.
Is it on?
Oh, it's always on. Alexa, what do you do?
I can play music, answer questions, get the news and weather, create to-do lists, and much more.
Alexa, what time is it?
The time is 3:27.
You actually don't have to yell at it, okay? It uses far-field technology so it can hear you from anywhere in the room.
Essentially a Siri-like personal assistant crammed inside a speaker. We will never be offline again, as machines not just look at us, but also listen to everything we say, storing it in a corporate cloud so our most personal, mundane moments of daily life are farmed for even bigger profits. A lot of this sort of invisible technology is beginning to get visible because of the whistleblowing activities of Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, and Chelsea Manning, who exposed the sheer scale of mass surveillance by governments and corporations. Slavoj Zizek had written last year, "Whistleblowing is now an essential art. It is our means of keeping public reason alive." A year on, we see its remnants in several things, including this recent graffiti in New York. And then, of course, the brief manifestation of their 3D printed caricatures available for $99 show how their whistleblowing activities have been fully consumed. Another side of this technological landscape are stories of small groups of people creating products and services that might perhaps have previously required the brute force of a corporation. For instance, this is Bento Box, a biotechnology laboratory in a box that enables scientists, DIY biologists, artists, and all other curious-minded to engage with biotechnology any place, anytime. It will allow all sorts of DNA analysis that could be used for testing organic food at home to identifying genetic fingerprints and diseases. This is the website of a brand new organization called GeneCoin, who has an absolutely astonishing plan to create a new kind of currency made out of our very own DNA. This currency will then be distributed across the planet using the powerful Bitcoin cryptocurrency network, which apparently is the safest way to store genetic data. Whilst this feels so incomprehensible, it's the direction we seem to be moving towards. And finally, we see the rise of a new kind of guerrilla innovators and super empowering individuals. For instance, these are members of the Athens Wireless Metropolitan Network, installing their satellite dishes to build their own internet. This network was originally built by the community of hackers in response to the poor and expensive internet services in Greece. But as the news of mass surveillance hit the world, organizers saw their subscribers soar, as a large number of citizens are now seeking to control their own network. It's the very same ethos of guerrilla innovation used by Libyan rebels for what I call Jugaad warfare, where they hack game controllers to control their DIY tanker to fight Gaddafi. As you begin to dig deeper, you see how information itself is political, and those obfuscated by the state use powerful, deeply inspiring ways to create new kinds of access for it. These are members of Fighters for a Free North Korea at the border of South and North Korea, about to release 20 feet long narrow helium balloons towards the north. Each balloon carries a bundle containing DVDs, USBs, transistor radios, and thousands of leaflets printed with information about the world outside North Korea. And the sun sets on a group of African migrants on the shore of Djibouti City at night, who raise their phones in an attempt to capture an inexpensive signal from neighboring Somalia, a tenuous link to relatives abroad. Yet another story revealing an age-old tension between the political and economic agendas of corporations and governments and the liberties of the marginalized, who have found a new powerful medium in cheap technologies and clever tactics to fight with. But the list goes on. As I began to look around me, I realized I was only scratching the surface. If you are into this sort of thing as my friends and I are, you're likely to become overwhelmingly swept away by the torrent of news bites on Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, blogs, newsletters, drone wars, Minecraft smart cities, wearables, solar panels, crime predicting software. It goes on. In a recent essay, British journalist Adam Curtis sums up this condition really well. We have got this idea that we have screens all around us all the time, and we see everything, and we somehow know that everything that is happening in the world because it is reported to us 24 hours a day. But actually, we also have a sense that we haven't got the faintest idea of what's going on. The new sensibility at the moment is a sense of isolation, unconnectedness, a sense of what the hell is all this for, and a sense of uncertainty and anxiety. The UK organization Plan C are taking this very seriously. They even have a manifesto called We Are All Very Anxious. Here's an excerpt from it. In contemporary capitalism, the dominant reactive effect is anxiety. One major part of social underpinning of anxiety is the multifaceted, omnipresent web of surveillance. The NSA, CCTV, performance management reviews, the job center, the privileges system in the prisons, the constant examination and classification of the youngest school children. But the most fantastic thing about the present time is that we are actually still here, said William Gibson in a recent interview. And operating within this context is our little design studio, Superflux. I'm representing the studio as well as my partner Jon, who has stood here doing a ridiculous photo shoot for the Wired magazine recently. We are designers mostly, interaction designers, product designers, strategic types, but we are also artists, filmmakers, technologists. So one part of our studio operates as a consultancy or a design shop, helping with future visions, strategy, and product invention for emerging technologies. But the other part is a laboratory, exploring methods, materials, researching and investigating emerging technologies and the broader context within which they live. We have set this agenda for the lab because we know that technologies don't exist in isolation. They interact with a rich and complex world and are subject to forces far beyond their makers' control. As designers, we believe it is important to think about the wider field of complexities in order to challenge deeper assumptions about technological power and control. To do this work, we create tangible expressions of how our complex technological landscapes might manifest themselves in the near future. But these expressions, whether they are in the form of objects, artifacts, stories, scenarios, films, are not so much about the future. They are more like lenses with which to see the present. And it's the insights that we get into the granular materiality of our strange presents and alternate futures and the new perspectives they bring that we are most interested in. And so for today's talk, I'm going to share some projects we do through our laboratory, starting with a project called The Song of the Machine. in which we worked with scientists to design new kind of augmented prosthetic vision for the blind and visually impaired. It's a combination of gene therapy and optoelectronic prosthesis. I'll let our scientist, Dr. Patrick Degenaar, explain.
Patients with retinitis pigmentosa go blind because the light-sensitive cells in their eyes are dysfunctional. The remaining circuitry is, however, intact. In 2003, the discovery of a special light-sensitive protein in algae led to the new field of optogenetics. We can use these special light-sensitive proteins to bring back some form of photosensitivity in the remaining cell layers of the retina. My team is developing a special optoelectronic headset to interpret the world and communicate with these newly light-sensitized cells. It is our hope that with a mixture of optogenetic gene therapy and our headset, that we can return lost vision to these patients.
So it's quite a complex scientific process that they are involved in. And what they've been doing is that they have started testing what this new vision might look like with the people who would potentially receive it. So these are some tests of the image augmentation that they started to do. They felt that people should start to feel better if they are at least able to see the world a little bit. So whether it's an outline or a cartoonized vision, image of the world, and so on. But much to their surprise, people said, I'd rather be blind than have my world look like this. As scientists, they were approaching it from a data-driven perspective, whilst as designers, what we often ask is, what will our experiences of and with technology feel like, valuing human centricity over efficiency? The most interesting part of this technology for us was how the body was being modified to better interact with a machine, rather than the machine adapting to the body's needs. We continued to explore the design of the operating system for this new interface, taking into account deeper connections between prosthetics and the brain's most vivid functions, that of memory and consciousness. So to imagine what it must be like to literally plug a SCART lead to your brain and to start to see the world in a different way. What if we gave people with this new prosthetic the potential to see in areas of the electromagnetic spectrum not visible to the normally sighted? So we actually worked with specialist camera equipment to film in these different spectrums and get a real sense of what it would look like. These are images of me and John. While the infrared lens gave me white skin and blue eyes, the UV exposed John's misadventures with the sun. And now I'd like to show you two short clips of a longer film that we made where we show how a protagonist might explore this new sort of super side. Tate in London, and all green landscapes start becoming really snowy in infrared. This thermal imaging in the train. So this is only a start of the speculative work that we wanted to do to show the scientists the remarkable potential of their own work, of their own technology, of their own science that they're not considered before. It is a new experimental aesthetic as well. It started to demonstrate to them a new way of thinking about optogenetics. Following this, we continue to develop the project further in a more traditional design sense, doing ethnography, product invention, and so on. Another project where we explored a science was around quantum computing. So these men are world's pioneers in quantum physics. They're building this, a massive quantum computer, and they invited us to help public get wider understanding of their work and its implications. We started talking to them, and there were many theories, and we got particularly interested in the many worlds theory by Hugh Everett, which is also sometimes referred to as the fifth dimension. It sounds very, very counterintuitive about thinking of looking at time from a fifth dimension. But we then spoke to David Deutsch, who is a leading scientist in this field. He said, the fact that answers obtained from a quantum computer couldn't be obtained from anywhere will make people take seriously that the process that obtained them was objectively real. Nothing more than that is needed to lead to the conclusion that there are parallel universes, because that is specifically how quantum computers work. So that was very abstract and intangible, the idea of parallel processing and the idea of having a super fast computer. So how do we make it tangible? How do we give form? So we asked a very simple question. What if we could see the world from a fifth dimension? Like how a quantum computer is meant to access the many worlds of binary information within itself, could we visualize a machine that could access many possible worlds that branch out from our own timeline? This is a schematic representation of how this photographic device might work. It takes a snapshot of a range of possible worlds that branch from a moment of time when the camera timer is started, doing parallel processing just like a quantum computer might. And then we built it. Here it is, the fifth dimensional camera, a fictional device that shows what it might be like when some of these possibilities around quantum computing move from the laboratory and start to influence our everyday lives. And this is the view of the object from the back, showing the viewfinder. But alongside the prop, we also created stories of three people who might decide to live with the camera and use it in their different ways. So this is Nolan, a retired Londoner living in a modernist flat, who decided to respond to the scientist's open call and adopted the camera for a few days. He started by taking photographs of the empty corridor outside his flat, and soon he started developing a fascination with the images of many worlds revealed outside, from the strangely mundane to the rather dark. All of these images are time-stamped to be from the same time, and they're just different probabilities of things that could have happened at that very same time. Another person who takes on the challenge is Molly, who works for the housing department and spends most of her time answering calls from angry citizens. The scientists bring the camera, start the timer, instruct her to face it, and write down the most memorable event of her day. As the camera fires, it brings back images of what Molly might have done in other worlds. Again, a time-stamped series of images, most of them seemingly mundane, except for something like a fire, or someone else in her place, or her not being there at all. Now, the intention of this was to try and get young children especially interested in quantum physics and science, so we took it to various science fairs and were pleasantly surprised by the responses from children. We conducted workshops with students where the camera became a prop to explore the world. Would placing it at a high vantage point reveal new knowledge about the Earth? Could it help us better understand climate change, probabilities for flood, asteroids, and even the formation of new continents? Here's a snapshot of John and me on our travels from science to music festivals, and to MoMA's Talk to Me show, which happened in 2011. This sort of public engagement of different scales is paramount to our work, Because as Catherine Hale says, it's not what the future holds, but the implications of this perspective for the present that are highly consequential. And in one particular project, we made that our entire focus. I did this experiment where I assembled a heist-like cast of different people, non-designers, non-artists, to create our collective visions, optimistic visions of the future. Here's a video that I put out to invite people for the call.
Power of 8, take 1.
Hi, my name is Anab and I'm a designer. I have recently secured funding from the Arts Council England and the Waterman's Gallery in West London to do an exciting project called The Power of 8. It is a collaborative experiment in designing our future, and this video is a call for collaborators to come on board and join the project. So what is it about? Like many of you, I too am a bit perplexed by the current gloom and doom surrounding the economic crisis, climate change, and many other foreboding threats of war and terrorism. I'm beginning to wonder, what is the future I have hoped for? And where does it collide with these gloomy projections? And I'd like to ask you, what are your aspirations and dreams of the future? The Power of 8 is a chance for us to build and rearrange our visions of the futures we have imagined together. If this is together, or to explore another point of view, or perhaps build valuable tools. So yeah, I did this call and there were people who came up, a school teacher, a nurse, a retired civil servant. They got in touch and we started this project. But the key question is, how do you bring people together that have potentially conflicting views about what a positive future might be? We started off with some guerrilla design summer school-like experiments in our bedrooms and cafes and pubs. Through intensive experiments and workshops, we learned ways in which to give each of our individual aspirations a space to grow, more importantly, building trust. Starting with a very simple question: what would you like in the street outside your house 10 years from now? Some of these ideas were then transformed into an open exercise for the Brentford community where we were based, and we put lots of Lego and tools like foam and started inviting people to build a different kind of neighborhood. Participants poured over the map, populating it with snow simulators, solar-powered airships, public free boxes, new microeconomies, and more. A landscape of fantasy and conflict, addressing some of the dilemmas we face today around climate change and sustainability. These ideas manifest themselves in this fictional town called Acres Green. While it was our hope to create something optimistic, what emerged was perhaps a little more problematic: a haunted alternate ecosystem of strange machines and modified nature. I'm going to show you one prototype out of them, called the Beamer Bees. So the Beamer Bees was developed because there was a lot of concern around colony collapse disorder, or the dying bee phenomenon, which was about how slowly we are not going to have the kind of pollinators that are required to pollinate our crops. So we wanted to address this concern with a provocation. We had a nanobiotechnologist in our group who said we could create a sketch for a synthetic bee that would pollinate our crops. We even made a convincing diagram of this Beamer bee, which would be created from the plasmids of 5 different creatures: a fish, a chameleon, a swift, a bat, and a hawk. We imagined various positive uses for this super bee, from pollinating crops in urban gardens to being kept as glowing pets. Of course, we were not so sure about wanting to mess with capricious living systems. But creating these prototypes encouraged all of us to think more deeply about the world of biotechnology and synthetic biology where nature is being designed. We realized how important it is to create tangible visualizations of these new organisms as they start infiltrating our real environments. And of course, in the context of this, which is the US military's Insect Cyborgs project, where they are either hacking real insects or creating insect-like surveillance weapons, the Beamer bee took on a whole new meaning. This is the final show for the project after 3 months, showing all the ideas, stories, and films. The narratives of Acres Green had placed us somewhere between hope and despair. Paused in time, we were depicting a world in which progress and decay, as well as technology and nature, coexist in a fragile, uncertain balance. Ultimately, none of us feel comfortable with Acres Green, but we can all see our parts in it, a bit like the future. The reason to do such experiments has been framed really well by Nils Gilman. Creative imaginings of the future offer resistance to the dominant world order, but also reveal the limits of that resistance. Another short project around a very highly contemporary concern is the Open Informant, which is a 2-week short project. So we know that the NSA, GCHQ, and many other government security services secretly collect and scan our personal information and correspondence for trigger words. Some of these are displayed here, from the overtly malevolent anthrax, assassination, and bomb, to the seemingly benign pork, dog, storm. These revelations have not just exposed excruciating details of this activity, but also confirmed the extraordinary disconnect between the scale and seriousness of the problem and the scale and seriousness of the response. In the UK, such techniques are often justified with an emotive narrative of safety. William Hague, in response to Snowden's revelations, remarked, "If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear." Statements like these act to control the narrative around surveillance and close down public debate on the complexities of the issue. Our response, Open Informant, wants to confront this narrative. It is a phone app and an e-ink badge that searches your communications for these NSA trigger words and then sends text fragments containing these words to the badge for public display. It is a form of open protest to say what is being taken from us by stealth is now being broadcast publicly. Here's a short video of the artifact that we made. And that's the GitHub link over there if anyone wants to try and build it yourselves. And then moving on to a recent, rather complex project that we are very fond of, situated in the UK and within the context of free national health care, known as the National Health Service or the NHS, which is a great point of pride for most of the people there. Here's how it started.
This leaflet is coming through your letterbox one day soon. Or maybe you've already had your copy. The new National Health Service starts, providing hospital and specialist services, medicines, drugs and appliances, care of the teeth and eyes, maternity services. Ask your doctor now if he'll look after you under the new scheme. Now don't forget, choose your doctor now.
But for the last few years, there has been a trend towards privatization through stealth, which is a new concept for you here, but quite critical there, and there's a lot of protest against it. Where there is privatization, big data is not far behind. Many nations, including the UK, are creating DNA databases of not just criminals, but their entire populations. UK's Caldecott Committee proposed new rules for data sharing, which would allow the government to build a DNA database of the whole population of England in the NHS by stealth, which many have likened to the idea of a genetic panopticon. Currently, there are about 80,000 women and 44,000 children who should not be on that database. DNA has immense commercial value and is beginning to get monetized in new ways. the California-based personal genomics company 23andMe had announced that they have been granted a patent for their technology that supports their family traits inheritance calculator, which will allow couples to see what kind of traits your child might have inherit from you. Apart from a child's eye color and earwax consistency, you can also select a child with the longest expected lifespan over least expected life cost of healthcare. This rise of genomics in healthcare will mean individualized treatments and developments of new genetic therapies. But this is closely watched by pharmaceuticals and insurance companies seeking to profit from our very own genetic data. On the other hand, you see extreme measures people already undergo in order to secure even basic health care. This 59-year-old man who has been jailed here in the US on charges of larceny after allegedly robbing an RBS bank for $1 so he could get health care in prison, with a growth in his chest, 2 ruptured discs, and no job, Veron hoped a 3-year stint in prison would afford him the health care he needed. Dynamic Genetics versus Man is a project where we explore some of these economic and political implications of genomics, synthetic biology, and gene therapy. It is located in the UK and centers around a near-future fictional court case between this company, Dynamic Genetics, a multinational biotech corporation, who accuses the unremarkable Arnold Mann of obtaining unlicensed copies of the company's patented gene therapies. Let me show you just some of the 31 pieces of evidences we created for this court case. So, this is in the near future where the NHS, the National Health Service, has become NHI, the National Health Insurance. This is the leaflet and sample kit from the DNA mapping program of the newly formed NHI. Man was one of the privileged few for a first round of genetic sampling for the new government database. This is the mandatory spit kit which Arnold was sent. This is the letter from Arnold's DNA results which show that the algorithm had classified him as healthy and comfortable. But further down was a short caveat. There were some elevated risk indicators. Dated a few weeks later, this is his NHI contributions bill, which shows that those risky genes had bumped his annual national health insurance from £247 to £6,127 and 20 pence. An unaffordable amount for a man already living at the edge of his means. This is the cost-benefit algorithm used by the government to calculate every individual's insurance contribution based on the potential healthcare costs associated with their genome. So if you're likely to have heart diseases or diabetes, and they find that in your genetic constitution, you're likely to pay more insurance for the rest of your life. This is a covert surveillance photograph from inside a black market clinic showing man getting an illegal gene therapy done. This gene therapy would alter his genetic composition so that his insurance bills would go down again. His treatment was apparently done by using the stolen Dynamic Genetics patented vials as source material. And these are a batch of counterfeit therapies found in the clinic. A forensic photograph documenting the layout of the crime scene. On the right, you see an improvised CO2 incubator used in the manufacture of illegal genetic therapies. A close-up of the therapy. Boxes containing mice which appear to have been used as test subjects. Sections of the defendant's machine-readable DNA with matches to Dynamic Genetics copyright material highlighted in yellow. Newspaper articles showing how the government does not support such black market practices around gene therapy. And footage documenting the defendant's interrogation. The lens of a court case as a superfiction mirroring current world organizations helped construct a powerful narrative to expose the story of a vulnerable citizen who might go to extreme measures to mitigate the impact of healthcare costs. Here's how our detailed and carefully crafted body of evidence looked. Each exploring the politics of power and control in a troublingly familiar future world. Pieced together, these evidential fragments question ethical, political, and economic implications of innovations in biotechnology that are quietly transforming our world. And finally, the last project that I want to share with you is a work in progress called the Drone Aviary, where we are exploring the emergent cultural significance of the civilian drone and its identity as an object of power. So today, drone is a heavily loaded term, simultaneously a mask of risk transfer militarism, an artifact of celebrity obsession, and a DIY enthusiast's dream. However, whilst technological wonder and privacy fears have polarized opinions, there is little real contemplation on how the presence of these machines will change our lived experience of the urban environment and the way we interact and understand algorithmic intelligence. All drones carry the burden that comes with being an instrument of tremendous power because of their ability to move unimpeded through three-dimensional space, obtaining unique vantage points, collecting data from those vantage points, and acting upon the power afforded by that data. And that's the bit that interests us. Our project is an investigation of what happens when machine intelligence finds a body and begins to occupy the sky above our heads. Because as J.M. Ledyard has said, we talk about atmosphere, stratosphere, airspace, but nothing of the words says much about the porousness between the rooftops and the clouds, the bit of the sky we breathe, walk through, and look out upon. Led by Jon, we have spent time getting under the hood of the technology to truly understand what these machines are like, building every part of the drone in-house rather than buying off-shelf drones. We also created a philology of the drones, seeing their historic origins from remote control copters on one side to military innovations on the other side. Besides the technology, the form that these machines take is equally important for us. How do we design their aesthetic to move beyond this visible quadcopter image we see around? In the first instantiation, we are creating 5 drones and giving each of them unique identities. By giving the drones form and identity, we want to start creating a visceral connection with these new species as they roam the skies, become part of our city's ecosystem, sniffing data, performing tasks with increasing autonomy. This is the first drone, the Night Watchman surveillance drone. First deployed in London in 2019, these roving semi-autonomous CCTV platforms became popular with city authorities by providing not just a cheap alternative to human patrol, but also giving a revenue boost for digital fining for community and antisocial behavior violations. Root Hawk Traffic Management Quadcopter. With close to 36 Root Hawks being operated across the smart city, these mobile traffic cameras help manage congestion, cut down road accidents, and car crime. Madison, the floating billboard, whose strength, apart from its eye-catching 360-degree LED display, is its highly targeted approach to advertising. Constantly scanning crowds and analyzing in terms of demographics, it positions itself to provide maximum exposure and deliver highly personalized marketing to individuals. We are also investigating the new vertical and digital infrastructures within which these machines will operate. So Amazon recently asked the FAA for permission to test their Prime Air service on the basis that they will use geofencing to keep the drone in an electronic box below 400 feet, creating digital boundaries. A consumer drone called Phantom DJI creates a geofence within a 15-kilometer radius of Tiananmen Square in Beijing and has now been extended to 350 airports. So we started sketching the frameworks of these new digital infrastructures, the flight zones, the flight paths, as seen by a drone. Unlike an air traffic control map where all flights fly above the city, we needed to think of the map where the drones sometimes fly through the cities, between the buildings, quite close to people. This is the map we are developing. It's not a factual diagram. It's our way of giving the most excruciating detail to a system that will need to be in place even if few drones were flying above us. It's assumed that by 2016 there will be 30,000 drones in the US skies. By giving this invisible infrastructure form, we want everyone to look at it and wonder, what exactly are we signing up to? A close-up reveals the various zones that the drones will need to fly in, depending on their height, depending on their weight, depending on where they are flying to. And then we also made a short film, the first instance of a film, bringing some of these themes to life. Video footage of the city captured from the 3 drones is juxtaposed with found archival footage from newsreels and fictional YouTube videos. We're going to continue developing it for our upcoming show, the V&A Museum, next year, titled All of This Belongs to You.
There is no programme of mass surveillance and there is no surveillance state.
I'm very interested in drones. Actually, I would like my life to be run by drones.
Here's our studio as I finish writing this talk, the fiery orange horizon, a physical metaphor of our philosophy and ambition, to see the world in a new light, to create an emotional connection with the raw weirdness of our times. Thank you.